Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? The Sporting News recently released an article of college football's 7 boom or bust teams in 2024. We'll respond to this list, give you our thoughts, and tell you some teams that we think should have made the list. But joining me, like always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Hey, what's up, Brad? As we, again, I will repeat, get into these dog days of summer where there's nothing going on. Sorry, NBA. When there's nothing going on too much on these dead days in between when you may or may not get a finals game. Sorry about your ratings, too. But we got to keep you updated on where we're headed into the NFL season and today the college football season.
Shout out to Sporting News for some good articles recently that give us some stuff to talk about. Like you said here, in the middle of June when there's not a whole lot going on. I want to start with the first team on this list because it's a blue blood program, a big-time college football program, but I think there's big question marks around the LSU Tigers. They went 10-3 last year, finished number 12 in the country. Look, last year that would have been good enough to make the college football playoff. Jaden Daniels, as we know, is gone, the former Heisman winner. First-round wide receivers Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors are gone. Now they bring in former Missouri defensive coordinator Blake Baker. He was hired to fix that terrible defense that they had last year that really held them back because the offense we know was a fireworks show, but they had trouble getting stops. So big question marks, are they going to be able to fix that side of the ball? They're also replacing their offensive coordinator who went back to Notre Dame. So this is an interesting team to look at, Alex, and I think they have boom or bust written all over this team.
Yeah, LSU has an interesting situation, I'll say. You have Nussmeier coming in now as the quarterback after Jaden Daniels and Brian Kelly. So I start to look at these coaches that made these elaborate moves from one team to the next. And Brian Kelly, we have to start looking at Brian Kelly because that team last year, explosive offensively, terrible on defense. He needs to balance this thing out and he needs to get it on the right track and do what he was brought in there to do.
Yeah, big expectations. I mean, big-time expectations. Look, 10 wins for most programs is a great thing. At LSU, we know the standard is higher than that. These Tiger fans are not going to be satisfied with 10 wins. They are a team that's looking for playoff appearances and looking for championships. So that seat, believe it or not, could start heating up here in Baton Rouge if they don't start winning some more games and winning bigger games. Now, their schedule is rough because they've got USC, Florida, Texas A&M, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, UCLA, and South Carolina on the schedule. Now, like I said, this is a team with a lot of talent, but they've got a lot of question marks around this roster as well. Let's shift to the next team on this list, Alex, Oklahoma State. And this is an interesting team because there's a lot of analysts, a lot of people that are circling them as one of the favorites in the Big 12. They bring back the reigning Doak Walker Award winner, 2 great wide receivers on offense, Brendan Presley and Rashad Owens. They have a veteran offensive line with 5 seniors and a veteran at quarterback. Now, the defense, I think, is still a big question mark for this team. Oklahoma State is 18th in the composite rankings. I think they have a shot to maybe win the Big 12 and potentially get into the discussion of the college football playoff with the new expanded format. But this is a team that there's a wide range of opinions on.
And Brad, the main thing is with all of this conference realignment, a team that we're going to talk about later, so I'll save that until you mention them, but also Colorado coming in. So you have a few teams, coming into not the division, but the conference that are there to prove themselves. So I think that this is going to make it tough for a lot of teams that may have been good in previous year or may have had a chance to be a fringe team. Now, more teams with more competition is coming in, and you have to get up and be ready for these games and not think you can just cruise through like you did in previous years.
How about Florida State, Alex? They make this list. The Seminoles, as we know, the team that got left out of the college football playoff last year, had people all up in arms about it after an undefeated regular season. They brought in 17 players via the portal. A lot of new talent for this team, including quarterback DJU, two-time transfer, played at Clemson and Oregon State. Big time pressure on this kid. I think for him to finally put it all together with FSU, we know this guy was a big 5-star recruit coming out of high school, hasn't really lived up to it. This is his last chance on a bigger stage to really prove himself in college football. Now, they've got the opener against Georgia Tech. That game is going to be played in Dublin, Ireland. That's an interesting game. Clemson and Miami, of course, on the schedule, and they've got non-conference games against Notre Dame and Florida. Their composite ranking is 11th, but my question is, how much of that has to do with last year's team, and are they going to be as good this year considering the changes they've had at some key positions?
Well, I think you just named it right there. We realize that Mike Norvell is a good recruiter and a good coach. I think we don't necessarily need to talk about him. This all rides on the arm of DJ, as I like to say, ukulele, respectfully. So this is all on him. You finally have a chance. Now I won't say finally, but now you have a chance to right the wrongs from whatever happened at Clemson, for the reason you ended up at Oregon State, and you still were a bit underwhelming there as well. But now you're on a big time stage with a big time team and a great coach that you should be able to say, I'd also too deserve to be a first round pick in next year's draft. So everything about Florida State is riding on his arm, and they're absolutely correct to have them on this list as a boom or bust team.
Now, we mentioned Oklahoma State in the Big 12, and you mentioned some new teams joining that conference. Arizona is on this list as well. And I think it makes sense, Alex, because this is a team that had a 7-game winning streak to finish the year, really was playing some great football down the stretch. They bring back quarterback Noah Fafita, really talented quarterback. And this kid can spin it. I think he is going to fit right into that wide open Big 12. But I think there's big question marks with the move to the Big 12 and with this schedule, because most of their toughest games on the schedule are on the road. And the biggest question mark by far for this team is their head coach, Jed Fish, who really had this program moving in the right direction for the first time in a long time, ended up taking the job at Washington after Kalen DeBoer went to Alabama. So now you've got a new coach and a new staff there and a new conference all at the same time. Talented team. There's some expectations for the first time in a long time for this Wildcats team, but I don't know if they're going to be able to live up to it. I think this team has bust written all over it.
Absolutely. If this was betting ranking, that would be the number one team that I would say would be a bust on this list, simply because of everything that you just said. It's very hard for when a top coach, I don't want to say a top coach, but a well-respected coach that had the team on an upswing, leaves for a bigger program. Then you get conference realignment. All of that added together cumulatively means that he's going to be at the bottom of this whole thing.
Now, another interesting team to be on this list, the Clemson Tigers. Their composite rank is 15, but I've seen some lists, some sites that have them as high as in the top 10. Now, the Tigers are coming off their first season without at least 10 wins since 2010. So by their standards, it was definitely a dip. Now, they're the ACC favorites, but I have to question, Alex, is that because of the name and their reputation? Because I'm wondering, is this Clemson team really a top 10 team or even a top 15 team? Dabo Swinney, we know he's a great coach, but he didn't bring in a single transfer this offseason. I think he's falling behind the times in college football, where every team is looking to upgrade with immediate starters. He has pushed against that and gone the old school route of bringing in high school recruits and developing them. Look, I'm not saying that's not important, and it plays a pivotal role in building a program, but in this modern age of college football, where the transfer portal has become such a key piece to building your team, I'm not sure it's the right choice for them. Also, when you look at the schedule, they start the year, the first 5 weeks of the season are going to be rough. They open against Georgia, they have North Carolina State, and they're on the road to play Florida State. So this team with big expectations, I think, could be in trouble here early in the year if they drop a few of these games.
Well, I think they are in trouble here. And we have to, at some point, have a conversation about Dabo Swinney and should he still be at Clemson to begin with all the conference realignment. And we know the buyout to get out of the ACC. So I don't even know if a lot of those teams can even get out of there. We saw, I forgot, I think that number was like 150 million or whatever it was for Florida State to get out of that conference. Them as Clemson are on their way down. They have been slowly trending in that direction while Miami has gone and gotten Cristobal, and now we see Florida State is rising back up, and since they got Mike Norvell. So we have to talk about what is the next steps for Dabo Swinney, because he's not long for this organization much longer. I think we're looking at him leaving there within the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it could be a similar situation like we saw with Nick Saban, where, look, great coach, a national championship level coach, a guy that's had a lot of success, but the sport was kind of moving away from what he did well. And it's kind of starting to feel that way with Dabo Swinney. If he doesn't pivot and start getting with the times, so to speak, I think they could be in trouble of really falling off the radar. And I think this is a pivotal season for the Clemson Tigers in that regard. Oklahoma makes this list, Alex, and once again, I think every team they put on this list makes total sense. Like I said, we're gonna add a couple teams that we think should have been on this list as well. But I get why all these teams are here, because Oklahoma is another team that there's kind of a wide range of opinions on going into the season. Their composite rank is 16. The Sooners won 10 games last season, but that was in the Big 12, and now we know they're going to play in the SEC this year, and that is a whole different monster. Oklahoma's offense was great last year. They put up a ton of points, but they lose quarterback Dylan Gabriel. He's now at Oregon. Their offensive coordinator took the head coaching job at Mississippi State. Now, Brent Venables' defense did improve last season, and we know Venables was always a great defensive coordinator for Dabo Swinney at Clemson before he took this job at Oklahoma. He's finally got that side of the ball playing better. But this schedule, once again, is loaded. Going into the SEC, it's going to be tough. Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, and LSU. I think this could be a brutal wake-up call for Sooners fans coming into the SEC.
3 words, ball them up. I don't know where they're going once they come, as they're coming into the SEC. Again, not Big 12 football. We know Texas is coming over, but they recruit at a better level than Oklahoma, and they also have the money, and that's a whole other NIL story. But they also can compete in their own state. Oklahoma is going to have a tough time coming into the SEC and being not necessarily a powerhouse, but trying to keep up with what's already there and the competition level, because it's leaps and bounds away from where they were in the Big 12, because as they say, the Big 12 is just a lot of offense, but this is a conference that plays both sides of the ball. So you're going to have a tough time coming in here trying to make a dent day one. Unlike Texas with the possibilities that they have, Oklahoma is not sitting in the same situation.
Yeah, it's a really valid point. And just a few years ago, when they announced that Texas and Oklahoma were going to be leaving for the SEC, at that point in time, Oklahoma was the better program. I said on this podcast, Oklahoma might be the better program right now, but Texas is more equipped for this move. And I got some pushback from people on social media when I made that comment, because Texas was kind of viewed as being down at the time. But you hit it on the head. The NIL has changed the game. And when you have a program with some of the deepest pockets in college football and a commitment to being great and not having any problem spending that money to upgrade this team, to upgrade the coaching, facilities, whatever they need to do, they're going to do it. I think Texas is in a way better position, and that's not just because of the college football playoff success that they had in kind of breaking through with Sarkisian. I just think this program is more equipped because of that standpoint that you hit on. NIL has changed the game, and it's going to be a major factor for them going into the SEC. Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. We personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. Another ACC team on this list, Alex, and you mentioned them briefly a minute ago, the Miami Hurricanes. Their composite rank is at 22. I've seen some other people ranking them near the top 10 going into 2024. So this is another team where there's a wide range of opinions on how good they're going to be this year. I think that could go either way because you look at this team, they've got a lot of talent. They bring in transfer quarterback Cam Ward, who is the best quarterback you don't know about. Look, this guy played at Washington State, was kind of off the radar, got kind of buried behind a lot of great quarterbacks in the Pac-12 last year as far as national storylines. I don't think he got much recognition. People didn't realize just how good of a quarterback he is. That's a big upgrade for this Miami Hurricanes team. I think Mario Cristobal, though, is the big question mark. Now, look, going back to his days at Oregon, this is a guy who's proven time and time again that he can recruit and he can build a talented roster. But can he really coach? That's the question, because at Oregon and now at Miami, we've seen plenty of in-game decisions that have been an issue for him, have cost this team games. Now, they have an opener at Florida. I think that's going to be a huge game for both these programs. This is a talented team, but can they put it all together this year? I have question marks around Miami.
Yeah, and again, you'll notice that from my perspective, I'm talking about a lot about coach and quarterback, not necessarily the full team, because I think there's talent everywhere, but a lot of these guys are coming in where the coach was looked at when they brought him in to flip things and turn things around, and or the quarterback is in their junior or senior year and looking to go to the draft. So they need these big seasons as well to turn around what is the perception of them. Now, you're absolutely right about Cam Ward and what he was at Washington State and now coming over here. But I think I look more at Cristobal than I do at Ward, because I think Ward will be fine. Now, he may not be able to boost himself up into maybe the first round, but I think he can do enough that, well, if he decides to come out, because this will be his third year, he can push himself into a second and third round quarterback at most. But really, Cristobal, you need to be able to make a jump here. Clemson is down. You need to be able to jump them, show and put a stamp on this, and challenge Florida State should you get to the championship game.
Now, we talked about all the teams that made this list. There's a few teams that we both think should be on this list, or at least included on this list. I'm going to start with the Missouri Tigers. Eli Drinkwitz came over to Missouri, has turned the program around, but this is a guy that just went 17-19 through his first 3 seasons at Mizzou. So last year was really their breakout year, and going into last year, he was on the hot seat, and people were starting to really question if this guy had what it takes to build this program in the right direction. Missouri went 11-2. They had 4 wins by a touchdown or less last season. So they had a lot of close games go their way. They have big expectations for this year. The Tigers haven't had back-to-back top 10 seasons since the late 1960s. So this is uncharted territory for this Tigers program. Now, their schedule is actually pretty favorable considering they play in the SEC. But for me, this is a boom or bust team because they've got big expectations, but can they back up that 11-2 season with another great showing?
This is actually one of my sleeper teams that I think is going to sneak up on a few teams that are on their schedule and possibly make the top 12 and are in the playoffs. Now, I could be wrong, but I think they'll be at least between 12 and 15 fighting for a chance to get in the playoffs. But you're absolutely right when you say the boom bust, because this can go south and it can go south fast. A team that's not on this list is my Florida Gators. Now, I know that may sound personal and I may be emotional about it, but hey, we all are. It's sports and this is what we do. But Napier has had 3 years now in terms of turning around this team, in terms of flipping it. You lost Etienne to Georgia. That is terrible in itself. But this team offensively has not been able to move the way that I thought it was moved. If you want to blame it on the OC Tom Chase, then move on from him. But there is a disconnect in terms of what we brought Billy Napier to Florida to do in terms of what we have. And as well as, I know there was the Jaden Rashada debacle that happened. Okay, cool, so what? But Graham Mertz, that's the best we could do? That's the best for Florida? We couldn't get anybody better, and you're supposed to be an offensive guy. You're supposed to be a recruiter. I know he went and got Cormani McLean over there from Dion, but on the offensive side, it's been lacking the entire time that he's been here. So I have them not just a boom or bust team, specifically if he decides to stay with Graham Mertz, with DJ Lagway on the bench, the number one QB coming in this year. But it's also his job on the line, because I said before, and please, I always say, go back and check so that you don't think I'm saying this for the first time. It is my hot take. He can't have a 7-5 season. He has got to win 10 games this season, else it's bye-bye Napier and hello to Dion.
Yeah, Florida is a fascinating team because they have maybe the toughest schedule in the SEC this year. The Gators play 5 top 10 teams, including Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Florida State, and LSU. They also, of course, are going to play Tennessee. It's going to play a Texas A&M team that I think is going to take a step forward this year. Not to mention they play UCF in the non-conference. That's a sneaky good game there. Look, the Gators are 11-14 the last 2 years with Billy Napier. Team, I understand the boomer bust label with this team, because if things go right, this team could be competing here in the SEC. But if they go sideways, it could really go down in a ball of flames. Now, another team that I think needs to be on this list that didn't is the Utah Utes. Now, quarterback Cam Rising, that knee injury that he suffered, that seems to be behind him. All the reports are saying that he's back and looks healthy. Their star tight end is back. He's also coming back from an injury. Now, Utah also returns most of its defensive front seven. And Coach Kyle Whittingham, look, he has to be the most underrated coach in the country. They play a style of football that, quite frankly, nobody else does in the Big 12. So Utah moving to this conference is going to be fascinating to watch. I think they're going to be a problem in the Big 12. Smash mouth run game, hard hitting, fast defense, well coached. I think Utah, right now, it looks like they're 12 in the composite rankings, but I've also seen them outside of the top 25 on some other rankings. So this team has a boom or bust written all over them, but I think it could be a potential boom for Utah because, like I said, I think they're going to be a problem for a lot of these teams now in the Big 12.
And you know what's interesting, Brad? We've been talking about these players that have been staying in school a long time, but you're absolutely right. Cam Rising, I know he was injured, but he's back healthy. Brant, who's actually the tight end that you were speaking to, this is going to be his 7th year, not just in college, but at Utah specifically. So he's seen every defense. He should know everything. He should be positioning himself, if not for a late first-round pick, but definitely a second-round pick. All of that coming together. I know it's a boom or bust, but I don't view them as such as a bust in the Big 12 simply because of what you said. They play big on the offensive and defensive line, and bringing that to the Big 12, which as is the narrative that they don't play defense, they're going to be the one team that I'm confident is going to be able to play defense and pull out some games. So even though they could be a boom or bust team, I'm not as high as on them to be a boom or bust team. rather to be a bust. I actually think they're going to boom, and I'm more confident. And actually, I may even lay some money on that. Okay, everybody, don't get your panties in a bunch, respectfully. Ohio State. Yes, you have your Ohio State Buckeye fans. Yes, you bring in a lot of talent. We know. However, when I say boom or bust, this is about coaching. Ryan Day's job is on the chopping block. Michigan is returning a lot of players, and they're still going to be tough. Now, they may not be the powerhouse or juggernaut they were last year, but Donovan Edwards and Mason are still coming back. So that defense and that running game is still going to be strong because there's still some offensive linemen on that line that are still left. But Ohio State needs to be, I would say, I don't know, Brad, you tell me, they should definitely be top 3 coming into this year, I would think. You also brought over Chip Kelly. So that was a big swing. And I don't know how that's going to play with Ryan Day in Ohio State and the the Big Ten. I'm not sure how all of that is going. When you mix all that up in a bowl, I'm not sure how all of that is going to play in the Big Ten, where they play defense, where the weather's tough. They need to show me that they can win with this new Chip Kelly style, who I think is a good offensive mind. I'm just not sure it's set up for what Big Ten football is. He's mainly been a Pac-12 guy for the most part. A leopard doesn't change their spots, and it doesn't matter what type of team they have. They still tend to say, this is what I want to run, regardless of what is being dictated by the talent level on the team or even the game. So for Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, for me, this is a boom or bust year specifically for you two guys, because Ohio State is going to continue to get talent. But can you guys turn that talent into a championship roster, a championship team, specifically now that the big bad wolf and Jim Harbaugh is now gone?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this is a team that is going to be in the top 3 on anybody you look at their preseason top 25, no doubt about it. And I get it, because this roster is absolutely loaded, and nobody in college football is spending more money in the NIL than Ohio State. That includes Georgia. That includes Texas. That includes Oregon. You name any one of these teams that's going big, they have been spending a ton of money that they can put together. So on paper, there's absolutely no reason this team should not be competing for a national championship. But you hit on it. There's some question marks around this team. And with this new expanded Big Ten, there's going to be some more tough matchups on this schedule, including a road game to Autzen Stadium versus Oregon, another team that's going to be in the top 3, maybe top 5 on everybody's preseason rankings. That's going to be a monster game in a monster environment. I can tell you firsthand from being there, that place is going to be rocking. It is going to be loud. It is not going to be an easy win for them. Now that you bring in question marks at the quarterback position, they bring in Will Howard from Kansas State. Big time pressure for this quarterback. Look, he's more talented than McCord, but he's going to have a lot of pressure to be great right away. And you've got an offensive line that I think still is going to need to develop. They've got talent, but can it all come together is the big question mark here. And you're absolutely right about Ryan Day. This guy's seat is actually red hot, and it's crazy to say because you look at his winning percentage, you look at his resume, he's been a great coach. But once again, this is one of those programs where the bar is simply higher. The losses to Michigan are getting old, and with Harbaugh now back in the NFL, there is going to be zero excuses for them to not beat Michigan and not be competing for a championship this year. Anything short of that, and I think he's going to find his way out the door at Ohio State.
So, Brad, let me ask you a question. Let's say they lose to Michigan. Let's say they lose to Oregon. What do you think happens at the end of the season for Ohio State? Let's say they win everything else, but they lose those 2 games. What happens to Ohio State?
If those are their only 2 losses, I think they would still more than likely make the playoff. Now, they're not going to be one of the top seeds. They're not going to have a bye, and it's going to be a tough road to get to a championship. I think ultimately they would have to go on a run in the playoff. If they don't make a legit national championship type of run, if they lose those 2 games, but they don't make a run in the playoff, I think he's gone, because that might be the only thing that saves his job. The loss to Michigan alone, I think, would be so damaging to how he's perceived by this fan base that he might be gone just based off of that. And the only thing that might be able to save him would be a championship. If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP, and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.